Welcome to this week's episode of the Sports Curious podcast. I am joined by my favorite co host and my brother and my co founder for last night's game. And it looks like you just got a haircut. Hi, Scott. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I had to get a haircut to step up my game to be equal to you. So
Well, I mean, our hair is a little bit different. I have a little bit more. That's mostly because I'm a girl, but the tiny human, by the way, you appreciate this, has decided that he wants to grow his hair out like Rapunzel. He's 5. For those of you who don't know, tiny human is 5. So he wants to be Rapunzel. And I said, your hair is long because we haven't gotten you a haircut in a while,
Mhm.
but Rapunzel's a long way to go, buddy.
I mean, Rapunzel did have beautiful flowing locks, so I can't really blame him.
I told him maybe by the time he gets to high school, he can use that hair finally to get out to like maybe halfway out a second story window.
Yeah, I think that's a that's a great goal to shoot for. He can rappel out of his room.
But I also said, don't you think that would hurt to like hang out by your hair to use it for swing from trees and things?
We won't know until he can try it. So don't put
It's
limits on
true.
him.
That's true. That is a very good statement and really well transitioned and served up for. We're talking about women who have broken the glass ceiling, have seen the limits and surpassed them. We're talking about women who are changing the sports world for the better. And this topic was inspired by the fact that we're in the Major League Baseball playoffs, and Major League Baseball has a record number of women in the C-suite this year. And so we've just kind of seen all of these great things come around, especially in 2023 between Battle of the Sexes, 50-year anniversary. We've had U.S. Women's National Team. We've had all these great things come back right from Simone Biles. And it inspired us to talk about these phenomenal women who are changing the sports world for the better. And we're going to start off with the ultimate game changers. And I kind of already alluded to this before, but Billie Jean King. For those of you who don't know who Billie Jean King is, she's a tennis legend. You would recognize her if you saw her. She did the coin toss ahead of the 2022 Super Bowl. She has been an advocate for women's sports for more than 5 decades. She's actually part of the original 9, which was a group of trailblazing women who put their tennis careers on hold to push for equal pay amongst men and women. Now, imagine that, right? Saying, you know what? We're all out. All the Williams sisters, all of them, they were all out of tennis. They said, look, we're out for today's sake comparison. And we're going to hold out till you pay us the same as you pay the men. Like, what a ballsy move that had so much risk. There's so much at risk, right?
hmm
But she was the first woman in sports history to earn $100,000 in a single year.
I mean, it's incredible what she did. And we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Battle of the Sexes. And to think 50 years ago that she had the foresight to step up and really take one for the team. All those ladies did that, put their careers on hold. And
It's
50 years later, it's really it took a long time, but it's obviously paying off now.
Yeah, I mean, we've had so many great things that we've seen over the year, and we'll talk about it this year, and we'll talk about it obviously as we get through the podcast itself. But you said the 50-year anniversary of the Battle of the Sexes. For those people who don't know, and I'm going to blank on the gentleman's name, I can't remember for the life of me. But he challenged her to a tennis match, and she beat him in 3 straight sets.
She did, and they just re-aired the Battle of the
Mhm.
Sexes back in September, and I watched it. It was at the Astrodome, which was massive at the time, and it was sold out. And I think they drew. Do you recall the numbers? Like 90 million viewers on TV,
I'm
which
pulling up
is
right. I'm pulling up right now. 50 million people in the United States and an estimated 90 million people worldwide tuned in to the Battle of the Sexes. It is still one of the most watched televised sporting events of all time, and of course, the most watched tennis event of all time. And she walked away with a whopping $100,000. So that's something tells me that's probably how she made $100,000 in 1 year.
yes, yeah. And I mean, if you translate that to now with inflation and things, that's probably got to be a couple million, right, for the one
Right.
tennis match.
Right. And
So
to give the credit, Bobby Riggs is who she played.
Bobby Riggs.
Bobby
Yeah, and
Riggs.
it
So
was watching the telecast, he was like playing in a jacket at first, kind of taking it easy, and then he realized
I
he
want to
was
get
in
my butt
trouble and
kicked.
took it off. Yeah. So
Yeah. Well, sorry, Bobby. Billie Jean King kicked your ass.
Billie Jean King, and we're even seeing the effects of that just recently with Title IX, with Florida State actually just got in trouble because they didn't have enough Title IX sports. So they kind of got called out. Now they're forced to add women's lacrosse as a varsity sport. So
So
her work from 50 years ago is still paying off.
yeah. So Title IX, for those who aren't familiar with it, says that universities have to have the same amount of female varsity sports as they do male varsity sports. And so hence why the Seminoles are probably a little bit begrudgingly bringing in a women's lacrosse team. But good for you, women's lacrosse team. I hope you go out and do great things, and the university is glad that they have added your sport.
Absolutely. I'm sure maybe they'll have to add something to the sod cemetery for the lacrosse team after some of their big
Oh,
wins.
I love it. Love it.
Yes.
If you want to learn about the Sod Cemetery, check out our College Football Traditions podcast. But I digress. Let's talk about the other big game changer, especially this year, U.S. women's national team, right? We all were devastated when they lost in the World Cup this year to Sweden in the round of 16. And it had been 4,403 days since they had lost, felt the sting of World Cup elimination. But this team did remarkable things. This was the first time they were paid the same as the men's team, and they've been wildly more successful than the men's team.
And I think, you said it'd been so many days since they lost, and that, they did end up unfortunately getting upset in the World Cup. But I think they can attribute that to how high the bar was set by the U.S. women's national team for so many years, that countries around the world really invested in their women's programs to get them up to par with the women's team. And much like I kind of attributed to the dream team when they were dominating for so many years, that other countries had to invest and had to make sure that they were putting a good product on the field. So it's really a tribute to how great they were for so long.
It's incredible. And for those, you probably remember back in 2022, they signed this historic agreement that said basically
Mhm.
they will receive similar travel as the men, pay, et cetera, bonuses. And that's a huge thing. We still see that discrepancy in travel. And you look at the WNBA, right? WNBA teams are literally not allowed to fly commercial. That is against the rules. They've made a couple of modifications now if they're back-to-back games or if you're
Mhm.
playing in the playoffs, et cetera, that you can fly private. But they didn't want a competitive advantage because some teams had money and other teams did not for private flights. And so they are hopping on that Southwest flight next to you in the exit row. As someone told me, that's the first class of coach, the exit row. But these women are 6'5" and they're sitting in the
Mhm.
exit row on a Southwest plane. I hope they're not like on Allegiant or something. Well, they're never going to fit.
No, I can't imagine that. And tribute to another woman, Brittany Griner, because of her situation, they actually amended some of those travel restrictions and allowed some more charter flights because of her, due to security risks. So another woman stepping up and, kind of changing the game in
Yeah,
unfortunate circumstances, but it forced their hand to make a few changes.
absolutely. Um, let's move on to some of the heroes of sort of this generation. Allison Felix is one that comes to mind for me. She track and field star. Everyone knows of Allison Felix, the fastest woman in the U.S. and probably U.S. history. They're in U.S. history at this point. She took on Nike because when she was pregnant, her contract basically said that she was going to lose money and she could be dropped should she stop racing because of having a baby. And obviously, having a baby is a whole nother can of worms that we won't really dive into. But she basically took on Nike and said, "This isn't fair. This isn't fair at all." And she had left Nike. She's now Athleta sponsored, which Athleta also sponsors Simone Biles. And Nike has since changed their maternity policy. They allow, I believe I'm don't quote me, but like 18 months for them to return back to physical condition, because when you have a baby, you can't even work out for 2 months or so because your body, your organs are all moved around. I mean, it's truly, there's a scientific reason you cannot exercise. And so, I mean, a bold move once again, putting her career on the line and her money making. She's not making the money winning track meets and winning gold medals. She's
Mm.
earning her money from her sponsorships.
And yeah, just think about how many women before that lost out on so much money, and probably ended their careers because they couldn't afford to be a professional athlete and run track anymore.
Mhm.
And to take on Nike is one of the boldest things you could ever do.
Right. I mean, it's pretty incredible. Let's talk about Simone Biles. I mean, she and Naomi Osaka, who I know we'll talk about, really came out and started talking about mental health. We all know that Simone Biles, ahead of the Tokyo Olympics, really took a step back because she was getting the twisties, which is she just was getting basically discombobulated. The pressure that she was carrying for our country and the world that was just really looking down on her and watching what she was doing in her every single move. She stepped back. She stepped back from after the Tokyo Olympics for 2 years. We're now seeing her come back in the spotlight, and she is absolutely dominating everything and all the things. But she really spoke out and said, it's not safe for me to compete in this state, but my health and my abilities, I'm worth it.
And we've never seen such a dominant athlete actually, take a step back and say, "Hey, wait a minute, this isn't even safe for me to do." And she was going to endure a lot of criticism and things from people online. So it took someone like, she's the GOAT of gymnastics. So if
Mhm.
she can do it, she's setting a standard for other athletes that can say, "Hey, wait a minute, this is just too much."
Right, and you hear her and Michael Phelps
Hmm.
and obviously Naomi Osaka talk about really they're taking a break because their mental health is more important. You can't be, and we've talked about this in previous podcasts, you can't be a great athlete if your head's not in the right space. No matter how talented you are, your head has to be there too. And Naomi Osaka took a step back from tennis after having a great start to her career, and she had recently had a baby a couple months ago, and then she's announced that she's coming back to tennis in 2024. So that'll be really exciting to see her back on the court on the court, and hopefully see her continue to pick up and dominate how she had beforehand.
Yeah, I think she already has 4 majors at her young age. So to withdraw from, French Open and Wimbledon at the peak of her career, and really probably sacrifice who knows how many majors she'd have by now, maybe like 8.
Mhm.
And now she's coming back after a child. So I think maybe, having the child, she's able to reset and get in a better mindset and probably start dominating on the court again. I think she's committed to the Australian Open at the beginning of
Yes.
2024 already. So
Yeah.
we look forward to seeing her back there competing.
Yeah, and you see these athletes who go off and have babies, but come back with a whole nother motivation.
Mhm.
And I will tell you, as someone who has a child, that it is a whole different level of motivation. Someone else is watching you, and someone else is learning from you. So you have to put your A game on. You have to be at the top of your game because the way you portray yourself is what your children are going to see. And it's there's a lot of pressure in parenting, period, just to raise a good human. And to add that on top of what you do in your everyday world and how they're gonna learn from you and how you work is phenomenal. It's a phenomenal motivator. Um, we're gonna dive into the very end. People who are not necessarily athletes, but involved in the sports world and have paved the way for so many others to do the same. And we're gonna start off with one that I think you and I both just love reading about and love hearing about, Nicole Lynn. She was the first Black woman to represent a top 5 NFL draft pick, and I love the story that she tells that before the draft, she took to the internet to figure out what other women agents wore to the draft, and she found 0 inspiration because no one had really ever done that before. There had been 2 women who'd represented players, but no one had done that really before, and so she's continued to grow her roster of clients, and she's a great advocate. She is a president of football operations for Clutch Sports, which is led by basketball agent Rich Paul, who is Adele's beau. Talk to me about Nicole.
She's really the trailblazer, like you said. She had no inspiration for anything to wear to the draft. It's never been done, and she just had a child as well. So she's now in the mom category of just kicking butt with the new child. And in addition to having the child, she may have had the best 2023 of anybody at this point. She already brokered a deal for Jalen Hurts, quarterback of the Eagles, after the devastating Super Bowl loss. At the time, was the highest paid NFL player for a few days because other contracts came up with 5-year, $225 million deal. And she also represented 2 top 10 picks in Will Anderson with the Houston Texans and Bijan Robinson with the Atlanta Falcons. And then also when she was the first to represent a top 10 pick, Quinnen Williams, he just secured his second contract with 4 years, $96 million with the Jets. So
Awesome.
she's had an incredible 2023.
It's fun to follow her on social. If you don't, I encourage it because it's fun to watch how she navigates all the world. I mean, I think baby was like 2 months old and she's like, I'm taking my first flight. I'm going to figure this out. And that's what we do. We just figure it out. We all do that in our lives, whether you're male or female, parent or no parent. We all just kind of do what we can to make it work. And it's really neat to see that. And I'm excited. She is winning an award. You and I are attending the Sports Women's Power Brunch ahead the Super Bowl in Vegas this year. And I'm excited because she's winning an award. So it'll be fun to see her speak and be there in person.
And she's got the Oklahoma ties, so
that's right.
We're big fans of that.
We're big fans of that. I did actually just watch the Kelsey documentary on Amazon. And it talks about them, the Eagles losing last year and Jalen Hurts and all of that. So it's there's a lot of swear words in it, so don't watch it with any small humans around. But it's interesting. It provides just a different perspective on the world of sports.
And can I add that Jalen Hurts has a team of all of his team around him is all women. So he's got, I think he just said they're all hustlers.
That's right.
So shout out to Jalen Hurts for having that foresight.
As we say around here, GSDers, or people who get shit done.
That's her, for sure.
Let's go really quickly into the last 2 people we want to touch on. Dr. Jen Welter, who is the first female coach in the NFL. She started as a linebacker coach for the Cardinals, has coached in the, I'm coaching in the, why am I blanking on the name? Vipers.
She
XFL,
was,
sorry.
With what the XFL was the first season, she was with the Vipers. Although we're not quite sure what they're joining with the USFL, so it will maintain to be seen what they do with that. But she's already had an incredible coaching career up until now.
And she is the inspiration behind the Coach Barbie that's out right now. So if you buy your loved ones a Coach Barbie, you can thank Dr. Jen Welter for being the inspiration for that. And then I want to lastly touch on the woman who opened doors for some of our favorite people on TV, like Erin Andrews and Carissa Thompson, Doris Burke. Let's talk about Doris Burke.
I mean, she's probably the greatest female broadcaster of all time, and she set the bar so high and allowed other women to get into the business with her professionalism and knowledge of the game, and just she has the respect of, I think, almost everyone in the basketball world and the broadcast world.
And she was the first woman inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame with the Kurt Gowdy Media Award, which incredible. And you would recognize Doris if you saw her. Beautiful woman with great blonde hair who always is just so knowledgeable. She has served the first woman on the full-time NBA TV analyst on ESPN, ABC. She's the first woman to cover the NBA Finals on network TV. She's really like you said, paved the way for so many. And so thanks, Doris, for giving us people to who look like us or look like me on the sidelines and let us know that we can, if we see it, we can be it. And that's what young girls now are looking at, all of these women carrying the torch forward.
Yeah, and she's leading the team this year on the NBA broadcast for ESPN. So she'll be leading Doc Rivers, former coach, and Mike Breen, also a broadcasting legend. So you're going to see her on all the ESPN and ABC broadcasts. And since ESPN and ABC have the finals, she's going to become the first woman to serve as a game analyst for a championship in any of the 4 professional men's sports.
That's awesome.
So
Doris,
she's still leveling up. She has not peaked yet.
she's still sailing through the glass ceiling. She's got a
She
long,
is.
there's possibilities are endless. So thanks for sharing this topic with me. I think it's just so interesting to learn about these phenomenal women. And some days you have those days where you have imposter syndrome. You feel like you can't do it. And I'm going to tell you, these women probably all felt the same way. And it's incredible to see what they can accomplish and what anyone can accomplish if you put your mind to it and really take that opportunity to drive and be motivated. And so, thanks, Scott, for sharing this topic with me this week.
Thank you. It's an honor to talk about all these incredible women with you, an incredible mother.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, we look forward to seeing you all here in next week for the Sports Curious podcast. Make sure you tune in because at the end of the month, we are doing a fun Halloween themed one. So it'll give you the creeps, but it'll be a lot of fun. So thanks for joining us this week.
Thank you.